All right, next on the docket, a Supreme Court case that hinges, and this one, Mark, I think they should hear, on money for justice. If a defendant cannot afford to fund his needs to get more evidence, is in fact that fair? Kevin Brumfield, convicted of killing a police officer in Louisiana back in '93. His defense says he shouldn't get the death penalty because he is, in fact, in their words, mentally retarded. And here's where it gets tricky. The defense claims it couldn't get money to get the evidence proving his client was mentally incompetent. Mayo, this isn't a singular case here, but would the public be surprised? I'm not talking about finding 12 investigators to create some alternate theory, just to prove competency at trial. I always assumed that was provided by the court here to see if somebody should stand trial or not. Not so much.
In New York it would be. In New York you'd have a 7:30 exam, and then the court would have two doctors examine your client to determine if that person's competent. And that would be, does he or she understand the nature of the proceedings, the roles of the parties who are involved. And at the end of the day, when you look at Gideon versus Wainwright, you want everybody to have a level playing field, because if someone's guilty, fine, you should be able to prove that as a prosecutor, and then hopefully we get the right result far more often than not. But if the playing field's uneven and you're unable to establish, because
I think
really
reportedly had a 40 IQ, they were saying, yeah.
That's something that should be considered there, but sometimes it's even a greater disparity, because you're not talking about someone who committed the act, you're talking about someone who may be factually innocent. So it's not a question of their mental capacity. It's the fact that this person wasn't even here. They were in another town. Or there may be evidence, forensic evidence, that shows, for instance, a ballistics report shows that the person couldn't have been that close because there's no stippling, things like that. All of that helps us. We have no vested interest as a nation in incarcerating innocent people, and by the same token, you want to be able to convict people who are guilty. But when you don't have that level playing field,
also, it opens up risk for appeal, right?
It opens up risk for appeal, but it also, again, you have intergenerational effects on people's lives, you have intergenerational effects throughout entire communities, and you lose a lot of good people from all different backgrounds who didn't commit any crimes.
Would the public, Jimmy, be surprised if they can't, let's say they can't afford you, right? And the public defenders, everybody knows, I think even the police procedurals do a decent enough job to show the stack of cases they got, but we got people sitting in jail with misdemeanors because they can't make bail. Right. I'm not talking for a day or two, I'm talking weeks, months here, sometimes even longer. We've done stories on this for people who've been sitting in Rikers for 2 years because they can't even get a court date. So my point is, everybody knows money and justice, they go hand in hand, but just to get basic stuff, would the public be more surprised than not?
I think the public would be very surprised at something like this. And, this goes back to years and years of cases that we've heard where death penalty representation in the state system was so abysmal because you had attorneys who did maybe 3 criminal cases in their lives that were assigned to these death penalty cases in these states. So, and this is the type of thing that would happen. I can't imagine that if an attorney in Louisiana or another state said, I need funds, I'm appointed, I'm not retained, I need a doctor to be appointed, I just can't imagine that that would be denied. I'd want to see more of this record. And I think that the public would be surprised and appalled that those basic needs aren't fulfilled or weren't fulfilled in this case.
Money in the courts, obviously, the better attorney you get, the better chance you have in trial, the more that you can afford expert witnesses and all the rest of it, but it goes more than that, right?
Well, whenever you look at a case like this, it's always talking about a guy who everybody knows killed the cop, and now you're talking about his mental competency. You never see cases where they're saying, the prosecution just never has enough money to track down all the leads. It's always the defendant who everybody kind of agrees that he's guilty, and he's done.
So true.
All right.
I'm not trenching on Mayo.
Please don't. There'll be a second dinner if that happens. Gentlemen, thank you as always. Great job. All right. When we come back, and again, we want more of your comments on the verdict, whether the jury, the control room, got it right or not here, because we may revoke Jimmy's decision. When we come back, though, we'll have headlines from the Valley. Stay with us.